Jessica Town and Rob Lange.
You're a jackass.
Embrace the madness.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into this week's episode of The Madness. I am one of your ministers of madness, the only one that is here today, unfortunately. Jessica Town, great to be with you today. So before we get started, we'll go into all of the usual stuff that we have. The Madness brought to you by ProSportsNotes.com, powered by Wildfire Radio. You can head over to either of those websites to check out any of our podcasts, as well as our articles, my articles, as well as some other fantastically written, wonderful articles that always are appearing on both websites over there. You can also follow us on any form of social media, Instagram at Philly_madness, and on Twitter at Philly_madness, just one. You can follow me, you can follow Rob, you can follow Patrick. However, unfortunately today, as I mentioned, I am the only one here, so we are going to dive right in to everything that's happening over the last week in sports. If you read the description on our YouTube channel of this episode, you know, there's a lot going on right now, and there is a Game 7 tonight, and it is probably the least exciting thing that's going on in sports, that there's a Game 7 tonight, which is really amazing because the Stanley Cup final has been super crazy. You know, there have been some blowouts, some not so much blowouts, so it'll be really interesting to see kind of what happens tonight. But like I said, not the most exciting thing that's going on, and definitely not the most interesting thing that's happening. So there are a couple different things that we're going to talk about today, or that I'm going to talk about with you today. Obviously, we have to cover what's going on with the Eagles. You know, they signed Carson Wentz to his extension. A ridiculous amount of money that's going to be coming his way. However, Howie Roseman has done it again, and it is absolute wizardry to see. The breakdown of his contract actually really kind of came out today. The specific details came out. Obviously, we knew the big number and the guaranteed number and things like that, but his yearly salary came out, what is incentivized in there, and sort of how it all works out to be able to keep the Eagles under the cap, still keep Carson Wentz, and pay him the money that he absolutely deserves and will continue to deserve, and also keeping them in a good spot to be able to continue to make moves and continue to build this roster and make it a successful Super Bowl caliber roster. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit more about the Malcolm Jenkins situation as well. Obviously, everything that's going on there. We'll talk a little bit more about the Eagles and what's come out through the mandatory minicamp so far, as well as what happened as they wrapped up OTAs last week. We'll also talk about the NBA Finals. You know, Game 6 happening tomorrow. Warriors force a Game 6, but there were some casualties in that forcing a Game 6. So we'll get into all that as well. We'll also talk a little bit about the Phillies and where they are right now and you know where they look to be heading into the All-Star break in July. And then, you know, unfortunately, Rob isn't here to sort of talk about it a little bit with me, but Rob and I attended an event on Friday night that I'm sure a lot of you saw on my social media, his social media, the show's social media. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But, you know, I am going to start with the biggest topic in the city right now, and that is Carson Wentz's contract. So, you know, it came out, I guess it was last Thursday. They officially extended Carson, and you know, the rumors were that there was a deal imminent, and they were going to get it done before the season started, before training camp even started, which sounded a little bit crazy, but you know, I definitely think it's for the better that they did that. Now there's no pressure on that. There's no pressure on the team for that. There's no pressure on Carson for that. It's solely about football. It's solely about winning games. It's solely about going out there and winning another championship. So today, Field Yates tweeted out the contract breakdown. So basically there's a signing bonus of a little over $16 million, and then the base salary and roster bonuses. So for this year, Carson Wentz is only making a $720,000 salary, which is absurd in itself. That he's going to make that. I mean, it sounds absurd that to say this is a little number, but for an NFL quarterback, especially of his caliber, that is a little number. So next year, 2020, he's going to make his salary is 1.38 million, and 8 million in roster bonuses. 2021, he's going to make 3.9 million and 10 million in a roster bonus. 2022, he's going to make 18.5 million and 1,000 in a roster bonus. I don't know if that's a typo. I feel like that should say 1 million and not just 1,000, but I don't know the answer to that completely. 2023, 18 million and a 5 million roster bonus, and then 2024, a $21 million salary and a 5 million roster bonus. So in total for incentives and escalators, that's 16 million of that, grand total of a potential of 154 million with 107 guaranteed. So you get Carson Wentz in here for the next 6 years, at a minimum. You'll kind of see what goes on through there. There are a lot of people that are, already up in arms about this, about the deal, about extending him before the season, and you get your typical responses of the injury prone and all that kind of stuff. But I personally, I don't agree with those kinds of things. I think he's already proven that he can play a full season. He's already played 16 games, so that argument's out the window. He has proven several times that he is beyond tough as nails, and he will go out there to battle for his team no matter what. And, it really is going to take several specialists and the entire team to shut him down. Otherwise, if he could have gone out there and played with the broken back, he would have. If he could have played on that torn ACL, I 100% believe that he would have, because that's just the kind of person that he is. It's the kind of player that he is. It's the kind of leader that he is. It's the kind of teammate that he is. And he wants to be out there competing. So, he's going to do everything he can. And, he also mentioned by talking about what he's done for his body this offseason, what he's done to focus on, what his body's telling him, staying healthy, eating better, really focusing on whatever it takes to be healthy. Anything that is under his control, that is what he's going to do. Anything that he has control over, he is going to execute to the best of his ability, to do his best, to stay on the field for himself, for his team, for the fans, for everything. So, that is the kind of guy that I want leading my team. Freak injuries happen. Torn ACLs happen. He got hit. He tore his ACL. It's football. It happens. There are guys like Jimmy Garoppolo who don't even get hit and they go down and tore their ACL. Ronald Darby, his ACL was a non-contact tear. It happens. Freak injuries like that happen. I mean, unfortunately, Andrew McCutchen, just a non-contact tear. It happens. And, you see it in all sports, but especially football. So, freak injury, got hit. The back tightness was causing him a little bit of a problem, but it also could have been a result of the mental spot he was in from the knee. The brace was giving him a little bit of trouble. He was really in his head about it. He was really in his head about the knee brace. It was such a reminder of the fact that, I think medically he was okay to play, but mentally he just wasn't over that hurdle yet. And having that big brace on your leg is just a reminder of that fact. So the fact that he's in a sleeve now, but he's not wearing a big clunky knee brace that is a constant reminder of that. I think he's in a better spot mentally. Anybody who's watched him at practice or seen clips of him at practice has seen he looks right. He looks comfortable. And I talked about last year a lot on the show about how I didn't think he looked comfortable. I think he showed glimpses of when he just went out there and played football, but it looked like he wasn't comfortable. It looked like he was thinking too hard. It looked like he was worrying about a lot of other things other than just playing football and using his football talent on the field. He looked uneasy. He didn't look great. He showed glimpses of that 2017 MVP caliber year, but, he wasn't all there. And I think that being able to not have the contract thing in the back of his head is helpful. I think not having the brace on his knee as a reminder is helpful. And honestly, I think Nick Foles not being here is also helpful. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I love Nick Foles. A lot of people love Nick Foles. We've got a lot of love in the city for Nick Foles. But, having Nick Foles stay there and, having 50% of the fan base want you benched for Nick Foles and want Nick Foles to be the starter and say things about you being traded and things like that, that is a really difficult mental thing to overcome, especially in a quarterback room that was as close as they were and a team that's as close as they are. You do hear the outside chatter as much as you don't want to. Sometimes you do hear it. And it's unfortunate because you don't want that to hinder your team in any way. So, I think that this contract, they, got him at a good price before Carson wanted to do something that was friendly for the team as much as the team wanted to do something that was beneficial to Carson but also beneficial to them. And the contract that they signed him to was extremely beneficial. It's a team-friendly contract, and what it's going to do is it's going to give him the money that he deserves before he plays another season at potentially that MVP caliber and shows that he's worth way more money than that. And I think that's the biggest component of this is that, he will eventually be worth a lot more than what this contract states. And I think that's pretty crazy in itself because of the fact that this is a lot of freaking money. And the fact that he will absolutely be worth more than this is pretty insane to think about. So I think this is going to be, a really good thing. And you see through things like Doug Peterson taking the team bowling last week, and the chemistry that they built, the camaraderie that they have, his teammates are happy for him. His teammates are really excited for him and furthermore excited that he's healthy and excited to go out there and compete again. They're excited for a year of healthy Carson. They're excited for a year of having their guys back together, having a lethal, offense put together to be able to achieve, the goal that is set every year by any NFL team. So I think that that's, something really, really great for the Eagles. Howie Roseman did a great job again, and I hope that, it continues to, be worth it. Which I don't have any doubt that it will. I know there are a lot of people out there that still do. But there are a lot of things that, in addition to Carson, make this roster so scary. You've got your offensive line coming back. Brandon Brooks looks really good. A lot of people are really confident that he will be back for the year. When the season starts. If not, you've got guys like, they're cross-training Vitae at guard a little bit. You've got guys like Isaac Seumalo or a Matt Pryor who they were really high on. You've got some of these guys that you've locked up for a little bit longer that you're able to kind of put in there. They're working on cross-training a lot of guys to make sure that they always have somebody readily available to step in at the line at any given time, and it'll essentially be like there was no difference. One of the things that has been reported out of these mini camps so far is that you should look for a decently healthy Jason Peters again. They expect JP to perform at his Pro Bowl caliber, Hall of Fame caliber level. Last year obviously was a little bit rough for Jason Peters, not his best year. He played in all 16 games. He did not finish all 16 games, but I hate to say it, but he looked old. He looked old out there. He looked like he was really struggling. He looked like he really did lose a little bit of a step at a lot of different points. So he was out there day one along with everybody else, and they're looking for him to really get back to his true form this year for maybe one or two final years here. And another thing that's really important with that is the fact that their first round pick Andre Dillard obviously is all of the mini camps and things like that. he is directly next to Jason Peters every single time. Every single snap that JP takes with the first team, the first thing he does is he comes off and goes over and talks to Andre Dillard, explains things about the different techniques, explains things, because, the one thing that Andre Dillard is really what has been nervous about is the bull rush and that coming towards him. So something that he's going to need to work on is that pass protection a little bit more. And also just working with some of the bigger, faster DNs that he didn't maybe see in college. So having a mentor like Jason Peters is what's going to absolutely help him thrive completely in the NFL and be our left tackle of the future. So the fact that they are kind of attached at the hip looks like they've got a good relationship starting, and obviously the Eagles are going to make sure they continue to facilitate that relationship. I think that's going to be really great for there's not much better of a person for Andre Dillard to sit behind for a year or two and learn from than Jason Peters at the left tackle position. So that's, I think, really great. Another thing with training camp right now or mini camp right now is the fact that they've had perfect attendance for the second year in a row. Obviously, mini camps are mandatory. However, sometimes that doesn't always work out that way. And there do end up being, some players, whether they want a new contract or they just don't feel like showing up, I don't know. They decide that they are going to hold out. So, it's happened in several different places. It's happened with several different teams. It's not completely new. It's not a new idea. A lot of people, including Adam Schefter, were under the impression that Malcolm Jenkins was going to hold out. Luckily, he did not. He is at camp. He's there with his teammates. He's there to support. He knows he's a leader. He knows his role in the team. He knows his role on the roster. He knows how important he is. And I think that the fact that he did show up and he's not acting like some of these other, more diva-like players out there, the fact that he's there, the fact that he's present really shows a lot about him as a player. It shows a lot about him as a person, which I don't think anybody had any questions about Malcolm Jenkins as a man, as a person, as a, genuinely fantastic human being. But, he was asked after the first day of minicamp, he was asked about his contract and things like that, and he mentioned a few different things about thinking he's outplayed his current contract and his relationship with Jeffrey Lurie. So we're gonna listen to a clip of that just to kind of give you an idea of what Malcolm had to say.
They understand your position, and there's a pretty good understanding on both sides while you're talking.
Yeah, for me, I think they understand, the value that I bring. I feel respected, which I think is the biggest part. As a player, you want to make sure that you're valued and that you feel respected. But there is a business side of it and some other things involved in there. So at the end of the day, I think everybody wants to win. I love being an Eagle, love being here, love this team, this locker room, and I want to be a part of it. So that's why I'm here.
How do you have a relationship with Jeffrey Lurie? Has he reached out to you and spoken to you about maybe getting something done?
We've talked. I think that's one of the reasons that I feel comfortable even being here is because my relationship with Jeff Lurie and understanding that I do feel valued and respected, and that's not always the case for players in this league, and I understand what that means. So, yeah, we've talked.
What will it take for you to be, in your opinion, happy with a new deal or revised deal so you're here for training camp and happy going forward? Whatever. I think like any other, business, you look at what the market value is, and based off of your production, what that value is. So for me, I'm not out to be. When you're under contract, you're not out. You can't be the highest paid out there. Nor do I want to be. But you want to be within the ballpark of what your value is. But I can't control that. As we continue to play, that value might go up. I know I've been playing at a high level for a long, consistent time, and I plan to continue doing that. When there's a situation.
So that's what Malcolm had to say to some of those questions, and I think part of what makes Malcolm so special is he's a smart guy. Like I said, he's not one of those divas. He's not going to hold out like a Le'Veon Bell or an Earl Thomas. He's not going to act like that. That's not who he is. That's not what he's going to do. He values his teammates. He values his role. He values his leadership too much to act like that. He's not going to do that. So I think what's really important is, he realizes that he's not going to get a drastic change. And I don't think he expects a drastic change. As he said, he doesn't expect to be the highest paid. But he does think he's outplayed his contract and the market has adjusted since he signed the contract. And I think that's fair. And I think, he's got a point. And I also think that he deserves that money. I mean, he's played 98% of the snaps since he came here. He played every single snap on defense last year and on special teams. We don't win a Super Bowl without Malcolm Jenkins. He is the guy who sets the tone for the defense. Patrick and I talked about last week, I never thought, I grew up on Brian Dawkins. That's what I remember. That's how I fell in love with the Eagles, was watching Brian Dawkins play. That emotion and that passion perfectly emulates the fan base and what we feel for the Eagles. That's exactly what brought me into my love for the Eagles. Why I'm sitting here right now, working on, trying to make a living talking about the Eagles and the Sixers and that. Brian Dawkins is, the player, is the athlete that I credit with my love for Philly sports. So, you never thought that you were going to see someone or have someone come into this city that was going to be as similar to Brian Dawkins. You never thought you were going to see someone with that kind of passion and that represents the city, the team, the fan base so well and comes to each and every game, plays each and every snap with that kind of intensity and fire. Well, Malcolm Jenkins is the closest that we are ever going to get to a Brian Dawkins. So the fact that he has done what he's done, and on top of that, I mean, let's also talk about what he's done for the city. He feeding the homeless. He's with his charity, with his work, he has done so much for so many people. He's such a good person. He owns another business in the city, DeMarsville. He owns his suit company. They feature, this month they're featuring Philly artists in the shop. They really take care of people, and he really takes care of people. He's a good guy, and I think he absolutely deserves that money. However, there's a big discussion going on about it right now based on, NFL players honoring their contracts. You signed that contract, you were okay with that contract, now you have to honor that contract, and you don't get to just show up and demand a new one. I kind of I understand that. I understand where that's coming from, but for me, it has to go both ways. If it's a player that you expect to honor the contract that they signed, fine. But then from that point, you need to expect the organization and the team to honor the contract that they put forward. So too many times do people sign these contracts, the team agrees on the contract, the player agrees on the contract, and then the player isn't performing to what the team expected when they signed them to the contract, and they can just cut them. They don't have to honor that contract. They just cut them. It happens all the time. In all sports. Not even just football, all sports. Happens all the time. Now, sometimes, or you trade them, things like that. Sometimes in that situation, for example, the Giants. The Giants are eating a lot of the money of Odell Beckham's contract, and they still traded him to the Browns. That's a whole different situation. There are guys that have been casualties of this in recent years. Think about it. Chris Maragos was injured. He couldn't live up to his contract. I mean, you understand it because it's a business, but still, there was that. Brent Selleck, how many games did he miss in his 11 years as an Eagle? Not many. Too much money. Cut him. Okay? It happens. It happens. Okay? So I'm okay with you thinking they should honor that the NFL players should honor their contracts and they should not go back and ask to restructure them or ask for more money. I'm okay with you believing that, but you have to believe it both ways. And it doesn't happen both ways. So these NFL players, they should be allowed when the market changes. And, Patrick and I talked about this last week as well. Some of the guys that are making more money than Malcolm Jenkins are not performing at the same caliber or even remotely the same caliber that Malcolm Jenkins is. Is Landon Collins a good player? Yeah, he's a really good player. He's a really good player. Does he deserve his contract? Absolutely. Do I think that Malcolm Jenkins is more reliable, more durable, and, ultimately just better all around than Landon Collins? You bet your ass I do. Yeah, I do. We don't win a Super Bowl without Malcolm Jenkins. What has Landon Collins done to earn all that money? Been on the 3-13 Giants for the last couple years? Sorry, but you haven't done anything there. It's the truth. There's some no-name guy in Green Bay making more money than Malcolm Jenkins. What has he done? What has the Green Bay Packers defense done literally in the last 10 years? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you look at Malcolm Jenkins, he plays snaps at corner. He plays snaps at safety. He plays snaps at freaking linebacker. He plays all over the defense wherever they need him to. And he plays on special teams. And he's damn good at all of it. He doesn't miss time. He hasn't, at least, knock on wood. He absolutely deserves to have that conversation with Howie Roseman for the potential for him to rework just for a little bit of more guaranteed money. I don't think he wants a world-beating contract. I don't think he wants a ridiculous amount. I think he wants a little bit more guaranteed. He's looking out for himself. That's also why he came to minicamp as well. He's going to get fined if he doesn't. If he's worried about his money, he's smart enough to not lose it. Like some of the other idiots out there. So, I understand the kind of old school view of things that, you sign a contract, you have to honor a contract. That's true, but the other half needs to honor it as well. And that doesn't happen frequently enough in the NFL. And sometimes it's a little bit more. I think the Eagles do a really good job of handling it the correct way. I think the Eagles do a really good job of, trying to take care of their players, especially the ones that have done so much for them in return. But what's going to happen is there are players around the league that they don't get that same kind of courtesy. And, they're doing, good things for their team still, and they just get, cut and thrown away like yesterday's garbage. For a guy like Malcolm, who is probably one of the furthest things from yesterday's garbage, he at least deserves that conversation. He's a smart guy. He's a good guy. He's not a diva in here demanding money left and right. He just wants to be compensated adequately for his value and based on the market. And right now the market has changed and his current contract doesn't necessarily reflect adequate compensation for his performance. So I think it's great that he's there. I think he will continue to be there. I don't think that we're gonna have a problem with that. I think it'll just be interesting to kind of see how it comes out. And again, based on the Carson Wentz contract, as I mentioned, it's a team-friendly deal. So they are going to be able to work out some contracts for other players, hopefully giving Malcolm just a little bit more guaranteed money is one of them. Aside from, contract talks, there are a lot of players this year that, we're hoping to see come back from injury. There were too many players on IR last year. I think there were 22 players or something crazy total on IR at one point or another, which is a ridiculous number. There are 53 guys on a roster. Think about how much turnover we had and what we had to do there because there were 22 players on IR. So a couple guys that were, a full appeared to be a full go, had their helmet on. We're doing position drills with the rest of the healthy guys. Rodney McLeod was one. Ronald Darby all had their helmet on, ready to go. Another one who finally emerged was Mac Hollins. He's apparently still alive. He, I guess, had a second surgery that he was recovering from, and that was one of the big issues. So now he's out there with his position. I think given who they've had to bring in and the fact that they've had to bring so many guys in now, their wide receiver core is, it's Alshon, Nelson Aguilar, Deshaun Jackson. Then you've got your guys like a Shelton Gibson, a Mac Hollins, and some others as well. You keep in mind, you've got a guy like Braxton Miller that was on your practice squad last year, so they've got some interesting pieces there. It's quite a possibility that Mac Hollins is a long shot to make this roster, which is unfortunate after he had such a promising rookie year. It's just, that's sometimes the way it happens when it comes to injuries and things like that. So I think it'll be interesting to see some of the different position competitions this year. Obviously, they've brought in quite a few quarterbacks, so it'll be interesting to see, do they keep 2? Do they keep 3? I think, Nate Sudfeld is going to be one that they keep. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the rest of them, especially because, you don't waste a 5th round pick on a quarterback, especially in a draft where, your picks were dwindling a little bit. So that's an interesting thing to think about there, just because, are they expecting to lose Nate Sudfeld after this year? Are they expecting to trade Clayton Thorson? It's an interesting conversation. You're not really sure, what's going to happen there. So that'll be one to watch. Also, another really interesting position is going to be in the defensive backfield. Based on the uncertainty surrounding Malcolm Jenkins and when he was going to show up and if he was going to be there and things like that. They went out and they really made sure they had a good number of options for depth at safety. Obviously they have Malcolm Jenkins, they have Rodney McLeod. They have a guy that like Rasul Douglas, who they had playing a lot at safety last year. After all the corners went down, they moved Avonte Maddox from safety back to corner. Obviously, they liked the way Avonte Maddox played at safety as well. They went out and signed Andrew Sendejo. They brought in Blake Countess, who they drafted a couple years ago. Were really, 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 regretted letting him go or thought having the necessity to let him go. They also brought in a few different guys for some workouts as well. Obviously, there were some injury problems last year, especially in that secondary. So that's where they had to, work with a lot of their, kind of picking and plucking and placing and kind of figuring that out. Unfortunately, if that happens again this year, they have, Dwayne Joseph was our director of pro scouting. He is now the director of pro scouting for the Oakland Raiders. So we no longer have a guy like him here. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what they do there. Now, additionally, because they've had so many corners that came in last year, there were a good number of corners that played well. Obviously, as I mentioned, they like what they see from Rasul Douglas. They love Avonte Maddox. I love Avonte Maddox as well. I think he was a steal. But then you've got guys like Ronald Darby, who they brought back on a one-year contract for, $12 million or so. Then you've got guys like a Jalen Mills, who he's still not really practicing after that foot injury that was a little bit more serious than everyone initially thought. You've got guys like Cravon LeBlanc, who, quickly was extremely hated and then actually became a little bit of a fan favorite for some of the things that he did So, it'll be interesting to see who's kind of on the outside of that cornerback conversation. At this point, it looked like they were sort of talking about the fact that, Jalen Mills might be on the outside of that right now, solely because he's the only person not practicing fully at this point. So that'll be really interesting to kind of see how that goes. Unfortunately, rookie Miles Sanders is being held out of minicamp because he is injured. He's got a hamstring injury. As you've seen with guys that have had hamstring injuries like Sidney Jones and, that just kind of been lingering a little bit. Sidney Jones, he's one I forgot too. He's a cornerback that they tend to like a lot. And if he could, get his hamstrings to stop acting crazy, then he could actually be pretty good too. But, they're not trying to mess with a hamstring injury. Sidney Jones, Darren Sproles, guys who were having some problems last year with hamstrings, couldn't really necessarily get right. Additionally, they've also fired and cleaned house with their medical staff, which I think is for the better. I still couldn't figure out why they hired the Sixers medical staff that messed with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and I still think that was stupid. But that's neither here nor there. They cleaned house there, so hopefully they're a little bit more clear, have a little bit better of a medical staff there supporting their players. They need to get Miles Sanders right because he could be a seriously lethal power in this offense, really make and help. Just give Carson another weapon as well as just being seriously dynamic in that offense. Additionally from the line, if you look at that, aside from the firepower that is Carson Wentz, you have a backfield with Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, Corey Clement. Then you add on, a guy like Boston Scott, who they seem to really like. Donnell Pumphrey has been getting a lot of snaps at training camp. In case you forgot, yes, Donnell Pumphrey is still on this roster somehow. They've got, and then you look at their receivers and tight ends. You got Zach Ertz on one side and Dallas Goedert on the other. You've got Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar. If all of these guys are healthy and they are on the same page, have got the good chemistry, and there's good protection from this line, you are going to see some serious points being put up again. 2 years ago, when they made their run to the Super Bowl, the Eagles were averaging 30 points a game. Last year, I don't even know if they were averaging 20. They are going to get back up to that 30 points per game realm with everyone healthy, with a decent offensive line, with good protection, with Carson having a full arsenal and a full off season of being healthy to work with these players. That's something else that, people forget. Nick Foles was the one taking the first team snaps all through training camp last year because they didn't know if Carson was going to be ready for week 1. Obviously he wasn't. So when he was ready, they put him in, and that was that. Now, just as you did 2 years ago, you've got a full off season with Carson at the head of this. You've got a full off season with him being comfortable. You've got a full off season with him with all of his weapons to get on the same page. We saw how scary that was the first time it happened. That is what is going to happen again. There's no doubt in my mind that this guy is going to return to that MVP caliber, and you add these guys around him, look out. Look out. Additionally, with the Eagles, they did unfortunately lose a front office man in Joe Douglas this week. Obviously, Joe has been an instrumental part in our last couple drafts, helping Howie Roseman get all of these deals done, as well as, the trades, the free agency acquisitions over the last few years. He was an instrumental part in this Super Bowl run. I don't, obviously it's sad to see one go, but, I don't think this is going to leave an immense hole. I think it'll all be fine. We all wish Joe Douglas the best of luck. He's going to need it with the Jets. God bless him. Whatever. Bye. I don't know. Also, additionally, one other thing, just a fun tidbit of information coming from the NFL. I don't know who saw this, but apparently yesterday in practice, Matt Nagy had the head coach of the Chicago Bears had 3 kickers all attempt a 42-yard field goal, which was the same distance that Cody Parkey, who is now cut by the Chicago Bears, Again, which goes back to our conversation about Malcolm Jenkins and contracts and honoring contracts, even when bad things happen, but that's neither here nor there. The same distance field goal that Cody Parkey missed or double doinked in the wild card round, and not one of them made it. They went 0 for 3, which I think is hilarious. And it will always be hilarious. That is all. So, that kind of wraps up my football portion, my Eagles portion. So, real quick before we sort of switch gears here and move over to Phillies. To the Phillies, we're going to talk about Phillies briefly before we head into the NBA Finals, and that's kind of where we'll wrap things up for the day. Before we go there, Madness brought to you by ProSportsNotes.com, powered by Wildfire Radio. So moving on to the Phillies. Obviously, they're still doing their thing right now. Nothing too overly exciting, nothing too overly horrible. Since Patrick and I were on last week, the Phillies are 4-2. They are currently sitting still at first place at 38 and 29. I believe they're a game up on the Braves. Jay Bruce, since he's come here, has been absolutely sensational. He's had 5 home runs and 13 RBIs in just 8 games as a Philly. He's also made some extremely impressive defensive plays for them as well, as he's become more of an everyday starter due to the McCutchen injury, then obviously the Adam Hazley injury. Obviously Roman Quinn is still hurt. Odubel Herrera is God knows where doing God knows what. So, they're having some issues. So Jay Bruce, who, you weren't necessarily looking to be your everyday starter, has become an everyday starter until you can get some of these guys back. He's doing a great job thus far. I hope he continues to do that way and we don't have to, ride it out until it goes south. But, I think the most impressive, at this point in the season, what is today? June 12th. So I guess, what is that? 2.5 months, into the season. I think the most pleasant surprise so far has been Scott Kingery. He has been the most consistent person on the Phillies roster so far. It's crazy to talk about because last year everyone thought Matt Klentak, was this giant moron for signing Scott Kingery to this contract. And obviously Kingery came in and he was abysmal. He was absolutely terrible. He didn't look like he belonged in the major leagues yet. He didn't look like he was ready. And, obviously the Phillies the last couple years before this year, were barely able to pass as and scrape by as a major league team as a whole. But, he really, it looked like it was a mistake. To anyone else, it looked like it was a mistake. But, Scott really worked in the offseason. He got a little bit bigger in the offseason. He adjusted just a little bit here and there, and he really has been the most consistent player. And the fact that the most consistent player who is leading the teams in batting average, you really don't have a spot for. Like, he doesn't have a spot on the team. He's just there, which is great because he can play anywhere. You can plug him in. Center field, he's done well. Shortstop, he's done well. Second base, he's done well. Third base, he's done well. You could put him in anywhere. And he's, played really well. He's performed well for you. However, you'd think that you really need a solid, concrete spot for your best player on the field. Now, through the beginning of the year, everyone was kind of demanding for Scott Kingery to be put in at second base for Cesar Hernandez. Well, Cesar has kind of shut everybody up there, has really started to hold down his own. At this point, it's looking like, obviously, Gian Segura, it has been another one of your most consistent players all year. He's not going anywhere from shortstop at this point. A guy like Maikel Franco, who has not been playing well. After the first month or so of the season, he was, his power hitting has been fantastic, when he gets a piece of the ball, but he's, batting in the 100s lately. He's not had a consistent year. He's not had a great year. He does okay on the defensive side of things, but, you need runs to win games, and with a starting pitching staff that's been as inconsistent as ours, with a bullpen that is injured, and you have random people in your bullpen trying to help you win games, you need to be able to put up runs to be able to support that. And a guy like Scott Kingery he's making contact, and he's making people pay when he makes contact. He's played in 35 games this season out of, how many have they played? That's too much math for me. What is that math? 38 plus 29. Yes, I have my calculator out. 67 games so far this year. Scott Kingery has played in 35. He's batting .324 with 7 home runs and 18 RBIs. Last year it took him 120 games to get to 7 home runs. 120 out of 162. Took him 35. You need to get this guy in the lineup every day. Right now he's been in the lineup a little bit more often because of, again, the Adam Hazley injury, Odubel Herrera being gone, hopefully forever. But, I mean, now this contract looks like an absolute, genius move by Matt Klentak. It'll depend what happens. It'll depend what's going on. He's been, like I said, he has been playing in the outfield, but he's also been getting a lot of time at third base, which is where I think he will end up being more permanently. Will continue forward more permanently. We talked about last week, the Phillies drafted with their first round pick. They drafted Bryson Stott out of UNLV. He's a guy he's a shortstop, third baseman. He's the guy who, you thought was going to kind of, challenge a guy in the infield when he's able to come up here, hopefully in a year or 2 or 3 years. If you have a guy like Scott Kingery out there, that's gonna lock up another spot that, Stott's not gonna be able to really break into. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes. It'll be interesting to see if, when and if Roman Quinn comes back, if he's able to stay healthy. He has not been able to stay healthy, but the guy's just so fast. He flies. So, he's a guy you want in center field. He's a guy you want in the outfield. He's a guy you want, batting at the beginning of the lineup, because he can fly around the bases in a way that a guy like Andrew McCutchen could. Losing McCutchen, I think, is a lot more hurtful than you would initially think. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of continue. Bryce Harper is starting to break out of that complete slump. He's becoming a little bit more consistent. He's hitting a little bit better. Rhys Hoskins is still not hitting as well. He's starting to bring in a little bit more. He still does lead the team with RBIs. So hopefully, they all kind of get it together. They make their way to the All-Star break in July. Hopefully by that point they get some of their relievers back. They get some of the guys like a Roman Quinn, like an Adam Hazley. They get these guys back off the IL. Right now they're still doing their thing. They just need to keep going. They can't. It's we talked about this last week, I believe. It's a lot harder to just win and just be in control of yourself. They don't want to make it. They don't want to make it. So they, I'm sorry, I'm completely distracted now because we have some comments coming in from Joe and also my brother, pointing out that, yes, the Phillies are almost at 69 games. I think tomorrow will be the Phillies' 69th game. Let's have a party. But anyway, it's a lot easier to control your own destiny, control what you're doing, control your wins, and stay in first place that way than get behind and have to claw your way back and rely on somebody else, rely on another team to sort of fall apart to be able to get yourself where you need to go. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but let's hope that the Phillies are able to limp their way to the All-Star break, regroup a little bit, and can finish out the season strong, unlike they were able to do last year. Finish out the season strong and make a good, significant run into September, into the playoffs, and can keep moving forward. So from there, I'm going to kind of wrap up the Phillies talk and going to switch gears a little bit over to the NBA Finals. Obviously this has been the biggest story of the week has been the NBA Finals. There are a lot of people who, I think in Philly, who are on very different sides of who they want to win this year. Some people really hate the Warriors. I personally don't. I want to watch good basketball, and I think the Warriors play really good team basketball. Nothing makes me more angry than watching a guy like James Harden, dribble down the shot clock from 24 to 8 and then, try to drive and then pay more attention to drawing a foul than trying to score. I really can't stand watching that. I really like the way the Warriors play. Everyone is held accountable for a shot. Everyone is held accountable for defense. That's what I enjoy watching. I think and it's a style of basketball that the Sixers play as well, which is why it's also really enjoyable to watch the Sixers play. So I don't mind the Warriors as much as some people do. Some people really have a problem with them going out and getting Kevin Durant. Other than Kevin Durant, they have pretty much, they've drafted and built their entire roster. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time. They drafted that guy and stuck with him through multiple ankle surgeries and injuries, and look at where they are now. No one thought Klay Thompson was going to amount to anything. All 30 teams passed on Draymond Green once. I don't really have a problem with it. I also absolutely hate the Raptors with every fiber of my being. If Kyle Lowry wasn't a Toronto Raptor, I don't think I would hate them as much, but I absolutely despise Kyle Lowry and everything about him. And I don't feel bad about it. I'm not sorry about it. I don't plan on being sorry about it. He is the worst. I hate watching him play. I think he sucks personally. I also can't stand the whining and the crying, and it just makes me angry. But I don't have a problem. I like Kawhi. I think that it's amazing to watch what he's done. It's amazing to watch how automatic he is. It's amazing to watch how he scores effortlessly and is consistent. He plays fantastic defense. He never gets in foul trouble. I don't understand how that's possible for a human. It's because he's not human. I don't have a problem with Kawhi. I think he is absolutely up there for the conversation as one of the best. But I can't stand Kyle Lowry. And for me, I typically am a kind of person that I like to think if my team has to lose, that team better go on and win it all. I don't feel that way with the Raptors. I hate the Raptors. I hate them a lot. I hate them a lot. And I hate your fans. I hate your fans a lot. And we're going to talk about it. You know what? Let's backtrack. Let's just talk about the game. A great game all the way around. Both teams playing really well. I still don't understand why Kawhi didn't take the last shot. He said in his post-game presser, he had two guys on him. It's hard to get a shot off. Yeah, but you're bigger than they are, and you're stronger than they are, and you're better than they are. And then he passed it to Danny Green, who, also is pretty automatic and has been shooting out of his mind this season and in this postseason. He didn't take a shot either. You let freaking Kyle Lowry take the last shot that goes off of the side of the backboard. It didn't even look like it had a chance, regardless if Draymond Green got fingertips on it or not. You see Kyle Lowry take the last shot, and you're like, okay, this game's over before the buzzer goes. Really anticlimactic. I don't understand Nick Nurse's back-to-back timeouts when Kawhi had, by himself, gone on a 10-0 run. I thought that was really interesting. If they end up losing this series, if they end up losing the NBA championship because of God knows what, a lot of it's going to come back to that decision and that thought process that went into that decision. That to me was really, I mean, you stop somebody else's run and momentum. You don't stop your own. I felt like that was a really big momentum shifter. You let Golden State relax. You let Golden State get their breath. You let Golden State try to come up with a way to defend Kawhi Leonard. And like I said, everyone on Golden State is accountable on offense and defense. That's the style they play. So they're good defenders. Even Steph Curry was playing really good defense in that game. So, okay. Well, pausing now. Breaking news right now. Kevin Durant has just undergone surgery to repair a ruptured Achilles tendon. We all kind of knew that was what was going to happen. We all kind of knew that's where that was going, but we hadn't really gotten any confirmation yet on an MRI or anything else from there. So, that just came out right now that he has had that surgery to repair that, and, we'll kind of see it from there. Kevin Durant tweeted, or Instagram, a picture of himself in a hospital bed that says, "What's good, everybody? I wanted to update you all. I did rupture my Achilles. Surgery was today, and it was a success. My road back starts now. I got my family and my loved ones by my side, and we truly appreciate all the messages and support people have sent our way. Like I said Monday, I'm hurting deeply, but I'm okay. Basketball is my biggest love, and I wanted to be out there that night because that's what I do. I wanted to help my teammates on our quest for the three-peat. It's just the way things go in this game, and I'm proud that I gave it all I physically could, and I'm proud my brothers got the W. It's going to be a journey, but I'm built for this. I'm a hooper, and I know my brothers can get this Game 6, and I'll be cheering with Dub Nation while they do it." So I think that puts to bed a couple of the different conversations that were going on. Obviously, Bob Myers came out right after the game and was very emotional. It did seem a little bit overdramatic. Just some of the things that he said seemed a little bit overdramatic, personally, to me. Like, I'm lucky to know him. He's not dying. He's not dead. He's still here. He just tore something in his leg. Like, he'll be fine. He'll live. I think, it's one of those things that people have said, obviously, this is why Kawhi didn't come back, because he didn't feel right. He wasn't 100%. This is why he sat out a year. Sure. But the player, as KD said in that message, his decision to go out there and play was a big part of his decision. They were under the impression that he would not injure it more. He's a basketball player. He's a competitor. He wanted to go out there and play. He wanted to go out there and win. He wanted to go out there with his team being down 3-1, and he wanted to prove how much they needed him. He wanted to show the world what he can still do. It's, one of those things where it was super unfortunate when it happened. I mean, I don't blame Bob Myers. I don't blame Kevin Durant. I don't blame the medical staff. I don't blame anybody. They thought he would be okay. He wanted to be out there. I mean, at the end of the day, if a player wants to be out there, there's not much that anybody can do to stop them from going out there. I know from personal experience, I wasn't necessarily an athlete with, basketball or anything like that, but I grew up as a dancer. I danced my entire life, and injuries happen. Things happen. You land weird. You tweak this. You hurt that. Happens. It happens. But there was a lot that was going to have to happen to me to keep me off the stage. There was a lot that was going to have to happen to me so I didn't go on stage and perform with my, some of my best friends who were dancers. There was going to have to be a lot to happen. I was going to have a concussion and a doctor tell me I couldn't go out there. I was going to have a broken bone. I was going out there no matter what. And I know I'm not the only person in any sport or anything like that feels that way. My brother's an athlete. My sister's an athlete. You have to tear them from the field. My sister took a field hockey stick to the forehead. One of her games last year. Took a field hockey stick right here, had 10 stitches. The girl wanted to go back for the second half of the game. And they told her no, and they were going out to wing night that night. She insisted on being there. She was at wing night with her head all wrapped up. She played in the next game. She had gauze and bandages and a sweatband to protect it. She played. You were going to have to do... There are so many things you have to try to do to get competitors, athletes, to stay off the field. Now, obviously, when it's something more serious, like a head injury that was a concussion, she did not have a concussion. When it's something like that, where it's your brain, potential long-term effects like that, if you have potential long-term effects of, like a sore elbow or things like that, it's like, okay, I'll tough it out and it'll be fine and I'll deal with it later, whatever. If it's your brain, that's a different story. But, it's not easy to just get an athlete, especially one who's always felt like they had somebody to prove wrong or doubters to prove wrong. Like, I think Kevin Durant's always been one where the chatter kind of gets to him, so he always wants to prove something. I'm sorry, I'm getting yelled at. So also, Joe is another one. He has horrible ankles, and he rolls his ankles constantly. You better believe he taped those things up as hard as he could every single Saturday to go out there and play football. He dislocated his knee his senior year. He dislocated his knee and rolled one ankle on opposite legs. Taped it up, took some Advil, figured it out. Okay, that's the competitive nature of an athlete. That's what happens. So, I don't really blame anybody for that. Should they have held him off? Maybe. Should they have tried harder? Maybe. But at the end of the day, if he wanted to be there, he was going to be there, and nothing was going to stop him from that. And there are a lot of different opinions on it as well. And, we're going to talk about a couple of them. So one of the opinions, people that were putting opinions out there, was Charles Barkley. So here's what Charles Barkley had to say on Get Up the other morning.
You've been asking these guys all morning if there's somebody to blame.
Yes.
Yes, there is somebody to blame. The Golden State Warriors for putting KD out there. Listen, that was not right. If you go back and look at the last 2 weeks, the article comes out, KD's worst nightmare, the Warriors are winning without him. Then you come out, you read the articles, the Warriors are really unhappy with KD won't risk his Achilles. They're frustrated with KD. Now this man has to be feeling some type of way. So I blame the Warriors for KD getting hurt, and I don't care what they say about it. They shouldn't have put that man out there. And you know how I know it? Because he blew out his Achilles.
Wow. So Charles, let me pick up on that. It's infinitely more important than anything else I was going to ask you. If Durant wants to go out there and play for his teammates, you think someone should have stopped him? I just want to make sure I understand where you're coming from.
I don't think you can ever leave it up to a player, because players always want to play. But I think if you ask any rational player, Damon, Jalen Rose, Jay Williams, to put a guy who hadn't played basketball in over a month into Game 5 of the finals and had some type of move around the day before, I don't think that's fair to that man. And you saw the results. It's just not fair. It's Game 5 of the World Championship. He hasn't played real basketball in a month. That's unfair to put him in that situation. And the proof is in the pudding, plain and simple.
So that's what our good friend Mr. Chuck had to say about KD. However, I would also like to take a second to remind you what he had to say about Zion when Zion got hurt and they were talking about potentially him not playing in the NCAA tournament based on being drafted.
I hate the people, and I don't like using the word, I hate the people who are trying to talk about Nike. Yes, I'm on Nike's payroll. We don't have no problem with our shoes. We have had the best shoes ever. This was a fluke thing, or our shoe would do that all the time. You know, the rumor now is he's been playing the same pair of basketball shoes all year. You don't do that. I used to switch up every week. I know Shaq, we talked about it. I know Michael Jordan, they played the new shoes every game. I would play a week and that was it. But I trust Nike shoes. That being said, when did we ever get to the point where all people care about is money? Shaq played college for 2 years. Three. Kenny played for 4. I played for 3. Michael Jordan played for 3. Tim Duncan played for 4. David Robinson played for 4. Some of the greatest players ever. Wilt Chamberlain, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson played. When we get to the point where you got clowns on television saying, oh, don't play. That's what you do, Ernie. That's what we do. We play basketball. I mean, I don't ever want to see anybody get hurt. This kid looked like he's going to be a fantastic player. But I get so mad when people act like money's the only thing that matters in the world. Like, oh, dude, you're going to go in the NBA, don't play. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Now, obviously, these are two different situations. You know, they were talking about, you know, a college athlete and, you know, not playing so he doesn't ruin his draft stock. But, you know, this is Kevin Durant. He's one of the best players in the world, and he wanted to go out there and play. As Charles Barkley said, he's a basketball player. It's what he does. So, you know, Chuck contradicts himself there a little bit, and I think that, you know, no one was stopping Kevin Durant. If he wanted to go out there and play, no one was going to stop him. I think one of the most interesting discussions that comes out of this, however, is the free agency conversation. You know, obviously, you know, KD, they think that his last resort is going to be opting into you know, the player option for the Golden State Warriors. You know, there are a lot of guys out there that are you know, big name free agents this year. You know, Kyrie, obviously, it didn't come as a surprise. He did not opt in to his player option for the Celtics. You know, that, again, not a surprise, but, you know, that came out today that he has officially, you know, made that decision. You know, Kawhi is a free agent. We'll see what happens there. Kevin Durant's a free agent. We'll see what happens there. Kyrie is a free agent. Clay is a free agent. Now, no one thinks Clay's actually going to leave, but now that he didn't make an All-NBA team and there's that extra money that he can't get from the Warriors, could it make it more of an interesting discussion? Sure. If Kawhi wins a championship, does he do this and walk away? If he doesn't win a championship, does he go, whatever, and go out to LA? Apparently the Knicks are planning on making a full proposal and attack to try to get Kawhi. Does that happen? Who knows? A lot of these conversations about free agents a lot of the ideas were based on having multiple superstars in one place. So there were talks of, you know, Kawhi and Clay on the Clippers. There's talks of KD and Kawhi on the Nets, or KD and Kyrie on the Nets, or, you know, 2 on the Knicks, and, you know, this, that, and the other. There are a bunch of them. And then, additionally, there is the AD trade conversation. The Lakers have been in talks with the Pelicans. The Celtics have been in talks with the Pelicans. Rich Paul has openly told the Celtics that you can trade for him. He ain't going to stay there more than 1 year. You'll get 1 year of AD, and that will be it. So are they really that stupid that they're going to lose Kyrie, probably also lose Terry Rozier, and then they're going to trade young assets like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for Anthony Davis for 1 year, and gamble on the fact that they might be able to re-sign him, which isn't going to happen? That sounds stupid to me. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd be all right with them doing that, but they would be stupid. Now, granted, again, I don't think losing Jason Tatum is a giant L. I think he's the worst, but that's neither here nor there. I just think that that would be pretty dumb for them to do. We'll see. What will the Lakers be willing to give up? Will they be willing to deplete their whole team just to get a year of Anthony Davis? Now, granted, Anthony Davis will re-sign with the Lakers. That's a given. But that also then makes it a little bit more interesting down in New Orleans. They draft Zion with the #1 pick. They trade AD out to LA. what do they get in return? Guys like Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo, Josh Hart. You combine them with a guy like Zion, you got a little something working down there. Still have Drew Holiday. You know, that's a little bit more interesting, maybe a little bit more of a similar style of play, maybe a little bit more of a cohesive nature down there. That could be a really interesting conversation to have. You know, the draft is next week. Yeah, it's a week from tomorrow. So, you know, I mean, a lot of this stuff is going to kind of come to fruition then, and we'll see where a lot of this happens. Free agency, opens a day early this year. Well, I guess 6 hours, technically. But, I mean, that's 18 days from today. We'll start to figure that out. We'll, see where that goes. We'll see what happens there. So, the fact that KD blew an Achilles, I still think that one of those New York teams might just chuck a max out there at him and say, here, see if you'll take it. They're not going to be upset that they have to work to rehab him, because at the end of it, they get Kevin Durant. What the hell? I do think it would be an interesting decision for KD to do that, however. He likes living in San Francisco. He very clearly has the support and love of his teammates, of his coaches, of the organization, of the fans out there in Golden State. Why would you want to pick up and move to New York? Pick up your whole life to move there just to deal with rehab? Like, you're not even playing basketball just to rehab. So that, to me, if it were me personally, I don't think... I really do think there's a chance that the Warriors do offer him a big deal. I do think there's a chance that they try to give him one. I think that they should put their focus on Klay and keeping Draymond, personally. But I don't think it's out of the question for them to try to give one to Kevin, try to give one to see if he'll stay there. I think it would make sense for him to stay there to be able to rehab. I think opting into that contract would be a good idea. You get that money still. You get the good amount of money. You're still making a ridiculous amount of money based on your sneaker deal and other endorsements. Sign up with Hulu Has Live Sports and do one of those commercials. You're going to be fine. You get to stay where you are. You don't have to up and move. You get to keep everybody where they are right now. You get to stay with people who you know genuinely care about you, love you, and will take care of your rehab. Now, is he questioning that based on how this last process was handled? Who knows? But that seems like the easiest route to go. Obviously, doesn't seem like he's going to do that. But based on the injury, I think that could shake things up a little bit for the rest of the free agents, for the rest of the way teams work out in free agency, the rest of the way that they position themselves and change their strategy and change their plan of attack for free agency. But I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see how it goes. Obviously, the biggest thing, the other biggest issue that came out of Kevin Durant's injury was the reaction of the Toronto Raptors fans. I'm going to play the clip again, even though it frustrates me. I'm going to play the clip of the Raptors fans when KD goes down.
Let's put him out. His teammates going over to check on him. I don't like to hear. Let's put him out.
So that was after Kevin Durant was already on the ground and trying to get up and being helped off by his teammates. Obviously, his teammates were not happy with the reaction of the crowd. Shout out to the Raptors players because they were obviously not happy either. They immediately went over to Kevin Durant, kind of tapped him on the back, but also did their best to quiet their fans. Because not only, everyone can say, it was just the fans in the arena in the heat of the moment. That's not true. All the fans that were outside of the arena reacted the exact same way. and it's disgusting. There is absolutely no room for that in sports, no matter what level it is. If it's little league, if you're in middle school, if you're in high school, college, professional, it does not matter. There is no room for that in any kind of sport ever. You don't want to see anyone go down with an injury, let alone one that requires surgery and will keep them out for an entire year and then some. You especially don't want to see that for someone who is one of the greatest to ever play the game. That is purely classless by a bunch of garbage fans who should be thankful that they are where they are because they have a robot who's going to leave them in a couple weeks. You are the worst kinds of fans in the world. You're an absolute disgrace to the sport, and I don't want to hear another goddamn word about a Philadelphia fan throwing a snowball at a Santa Claus when there are fan bases that are solely cheering for people to get hurt. Now, I will not say that no Philly fan has ever done that. However, I will say that there is a select few morons that act like that, and they are called out for that BS immediately. If you have any sort of respect for the sport, for the athletes that play the sport, you understand that this is an absolute garbage move. And I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care what team you support. I don't care where you're from or what you do. It doesn't matter. That is classless. And that is not the only thing that is classless that the Raptors fans have done. There's footage that just came out of them cursing out Steph Curry's parents while they walk into a Toronto hotel. There was someone who came out and said awful things about Aisha Curry on live television when he was being interviewed by the news. There is no room for any of that in sports. So say what you want about Philly fans, say what you want about Eagles fans, say what you want about how we're the worst fan base in the world. Our players don't have to tell us to not cheer when an opposing teammate is hurt. I was in the link when Jordan Hicks shattered Tony Romo's collarbone. No one cheered. No one was happy about it. I don't care if you play for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't care if you play for the Boston Celtics. I don't care who you play for. No one wants someone else to get injured. This is their livelihood. This is what they do for a living. This is what they do to provide for their family. This is their entire life. There is absolutely no room to cheer when someone can't do their job because they got hurt. That's absolutely disgusting, and it's more disgusting that the national media is like, oh, I'm gonna apologize for the sad little Raptors fan. No. I take too much crap as a Philly fan all the time on social media, out and about. I take too much crap for it to let this just go by. This is terrible. Absolutely disgusting. There were Rams fans cheering when Carson Wentz tore his ACL. You're trash and disgusting. Anybody who cheers when an opposing player gets hurt, there's no room for you in sports. It's unacceptable, and it really just, I was infuriated by that the other night. I was absolutely infuriated watching that happen because there's no room for it in sports. You don't respect the players as human beings. You're looking at them like they're animals in a cage at the zoo. They're not there for your entertainment. They're not dancing monkeys there for you to enjoy. Okay? It's not a circus. This is their livelihood, and this is what they do. And they are incredibly skilled, and they are incredibly lucky to be where they are, and they know that. But that's what they do, and you need to realize that they are human beings just as much as we are. There is a human aspect to every single sport. And until you understand that, there's no room for you in the sports world. There's also no room for you in my mentions on Twitter, because I will not let it go by. And some people thought I might, and they tried me. It didn't go well. Didn't go well. Okay? So, all the best in the world to Kevin Durant. It's so unfortunate that it happened when it did. Game 5 of the finals in, June, which means it's going to be a year, if not more, of recovery time for KD. You never want to see that, so it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. I hope he gets back from surgery. I hope surgery was successful, as it looks like it was. I hope he rehabs well and gets back to his normal condition, because you never want to see that. And again, as much as I can't stand, the Raptors team and Kyle Lowry, I do, as a sports fan who has a lot of respect for the game, has a lot of respect for the athletes. As a sports fan, I really do, appreciate them responding to their crowd the way they did, getting that together. That's it's so much more than basketball. It's so much more than if it was football. It's so much more than just a game. I wish him a speedy recovery, and all the best to him and his family, and I hope the Warriors win in 7. I can't stand the Raptors. I can't stand their fans. I hope Kawhi leaves you. And God, it makes me mad that the Sixers lost to that freaking team. But that's neither here nor there. The last thing I want to talk about today is another really hot topic in the sports world right now. Not necessarily Philly related. We can tie it into Philly a little bit if we want, because there's a tie there. There are a couple ties there, actually. So the Women's World Cup has officially started. As you know, the U.S. Women's National Team, I think, has won the last 2. Won the last one and lost the one before that. I can't remember specifically, but fantastic players. Absolutely wonderful. Obviously, the tie to Philly is Carly Lloyd. She went to Rutgers and is from around here. And obviously, Julie Ertz is married to Zach Ertz, and he will be on the first flight to France to watch the U.S. team play after Eagles finish minicamp this week. But the women, they played Thailand yesterday, and it was a qualifying round. It was a qualifying game, so obviously, a need to win. To make sure that they, really make the official World Cup. So one of the conversations that always comes out of the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team is the pay differential. That is one thing that has come out a lot. It's been in the news repeatedly, is a very hot topic of conversation when it comes to these teams. The main argument for the fact that they aren't making as much money is that the men, the broadcast and things like that, the revenue is higher. That might be true for different countries. However, our men cannot keep up with the big name countries. Our men cannot keep up with the Englands and the Frances and the Spains and the Argentinas and the Portugals. They can't. They did not even qualify for the last World Cup. Okay? So any of the revenue that was being brought in because of it had nothing to do with the U.S. men's team, because they weren't in it. Okay? I know that because I was in England when it was happening. I was in a bar, I was in a pub in England when England lost to Croatia. They shut down the entire city of London for that event. Okay? Everyone was there to watch it. It's serious. I get that. However, wasn't my country in it. I didn't care. It's just fun to watch soccer. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Some of the most fun you'll watch is a World Cup. Some of the most fun. The women, on the other hand, they are there representing the United States, and they are killing it every time. So, the big issue that came out of yesterday was they beat Thailand 13-0. The problem was there's a big talk about if they ran up the score on Thailand, did they need to score all 13 goals? Personally, I don't see a problem with it. If you can score them, score them. It is not my fault that Thailand doesn't have the best soccer team in the world. It's a qualifying round, so these games are crucial. Sometimes it comes down to a goal differential, so you got to keep racking up the goals. Sometimes it's necessary. I was listening to the Mike Missinelli show on my way to the studio today, and I thought that Tyrone Johnson made a really good point. He said, the first couple games of the year, an FCS team like an Oklahoma football, they'll play a lower level school who, it's really easy for them to sort of whoop up on them. If there's a certain point in time where the coach takes all the starters out, puts his backup quarterback in, puts all of his backups in, you tell him to go out there and he can still throw the ball. He can still, play his hardest. If he continues to score touchdowns on the opposing team's starting defense, that's not the Oklahoma's problem. That's the opposing team's problem for literally letting the second team whoop their ass. This is the same thing. There's only a certain amount of subs you get in soccer. You can't just sub your whole team in and out. They used every single one of their subs, and they were still whooping up on Thailand. That is not, to me, that doesn't sound like an issue. What does it matter? What does it matter? I don't care. They are also incentivized by scoring goals. So the more goals they score personally, the more money they make. So Alex Morgan, get your money, girlfriend. Why not? What's it matter? Literally, what does it matter? And I don't understand the people talking about that there should be a mercy rule because that's soft. I get it for little kids, but these are whole-ass grown adults. Don't be soft. The world is too soft. Stop. Absolutely stop. There doesn't need to be a mercy rule. This is a national soccer team. These are literally the best soccer players in the country for each country. Deal with it. Deal with it and watch these ladies kick some ass. Because a lot of the people weighing in on this conversation are not ladies. Okay? Your opinion doesn't sound as convincing when it starts with well, the men wouldn't. Spare me. Please. I'm begging you. If you want to have a rational conversation about athletes and what actually happened that doesn't start with somehow relating it back to the men's team, we can have that conversation. But if you start with me with well, the men's team, no. The conversation is over there. It ends there. And I'm going to watch the women continue to kick some ass and win another World Cup. And it's going to be fantastic to do because they're great. And, like I said before, we got a little bit of a hometown tie with Julie Ertz. So that's all Philly love right there. But at this point, I'm going to start to wrap everything up. So thank you for tuning in with me on YouTube. Thank you for staying and watching just me talk for an hour and a half. I know, not many people would choose to do that. I appreciate you for choosing to do it. The Madness, it's brought to you by ProSportsNotes.com, powered by Wildfire Radio. You can follow us on Instagram at Philly_Madness. You can follow me on Instagram at Jessica_Town or at Jessica Town Media. You can follow me on Twitter at RunThisTown with an E13. Follow the show on Twitter at Philly_Madness. Like us on Facebook. Find us on YouTube. Find us on iTunes. Like, subscribe, rate, review, share with your friends. All that good stuff. Hopefully next week I won't be in here all by myself and I'll have somebody else to talk to because I've been talking to a wall for the last hour and a half. But until then, I hope everyone has a fantastic week and embrace the madness, everybody.